what does a pharmacist do? Well, most people might answer that a pharmacist dispenses the medications that my doctor prescribes. Now, I work with a ton of great pharmacists, and one thing that I don't generally see is excitement about pills in a vial. And this is probably because pharmacists have been trained to do so much more. So what can you get excited about in your community? To find out, let's go beyond the scripts. Everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Scripts. I'm your host, Will Tuft with Pioneer RX, and this week, another combo guest. We're bringing in Ajay Mehra from Ugo Rx, as well as Jeff Rowan from Chancy Drugs. So Chancy Drugs may sound familiar. The name Hugh Chancy, I think, is very familiar to most people in the realm of independent pharmacy. They have 5 locations plus an LTC. And it's a family-owned pharmacy that goes back to 1966 and now ran by 2 brothers, Hugh and Bert Chancy, and now third generation joining the mix with Patrick. So exciting pharmacy if you're in Georgia. If you are in the rest of the United States, you've definitely been influenced by this group through Hugh Chancy's advocacy and his role within NCPA. So thanks so much for the Chancy team for lending us Jeff Rowan for the afternoon. So thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Well, Jeff, tell me a little bit about your role before we dive into Ajay and Ugo. Tell me a little bit about what you do with Chancy.
All right. So I've been a pick at several of our locations. And we used to do therapy optimization and sort of the beginning of our analytics program. And then we had a need where I was compound manager. So I'm right now still managing the compound pharmacy. But we just saw an immediate need where we had to get back and start helping other stores. If everybody's like us, January 1st was rough. Whenever everything changed, it's still been learning a lot. So we started working with Ajay toward the end of last year, and I think we actually went live with our first location December 20th of 23, and we pretty much saw an immediate effect. But my role is more of I'm still in the lab, and but I also do analytics, and my goal is justify doing analytics for full time, and UGO has made a lot. Really pretty easy. So
awesome. Well, for anyone not familiar with Ugo, Ajay, tell me a little bit about Ugo and your role within that company. And I guess 2024 has probably been super busy for you guys.
Yeah, it has. And thank you so much for having us on. So yeah, I'm one of the co-founders of Ugo. My business partner and I, we used to own an independent pharmacy for, a little over a decade out here in Los Angeles. And much like, all other independent pharmacy owners, kind of like Jeff was talking about, the beginning of this year was all too kind of synonymous with how things were going back when we had our ownership kind of troubles back in 2016. And oddly enough, it's crazy because for those that have been in it long enough, they could probably attest to the fact that Q1 of 2016 is eerily similar to Q1 of this year. And so, it kind of hit the heartstrings for us on what everybody was going through this year. So yeah, we're getting busy and we understand, but we're also trying to make sure people are really able to navigate through these kind of rough times and the changes with a little bit of direction and what we kind of like to call like a breadcrumb trail to the other side, just because we've lived it to a certain degree. And, with respect to Ugo, it's funny. I tell people this all the time. We built it totally by accident. This is not something we sat down and said, hey, let's build some tech platform. We were just kind of 2, silly owners trying to figure out what we were doing so poorly when we were getting crushed in 2016, but also trying to figure out what we were doing well. And, for a lot of pharmacy owners out there, they know they don't teach you that in pharmacy school. That's not something you get a crash course on. It's usually baptism by fire. So
yeah,
that's something we went through, and that began that kind of early stages of the inception of Ugo as a concept.
Okay, so still a little bit of ambiguity there. What what does Ugo actually do? So if I'm not familiar, give me the elevator pitch.
Yeah, sure. So kind of the key elements of Ugo is really to shed transparency, kind of save time, and streamline this whole kind of business acumen of independent pharmacy. So a couple things, like our big claim to fame, right? We when we owned our pharmacy, we were very heavy Medicare. Now, obviously, for a lot of pharmacy owners out there adjudicating Medicare, PAs, rejections, things like that, you're no stranger to these things. But also what pharmacies are no stranger to hearing from either a clinic or an MA is, a doctor wants to know what's covered, right? And this is something that kind of kicks off the beginning of a bottleneck in pharmacy where, oddly enough, the two people in charge of patient care are the two people left in the dark when it comes to, drug coverage for the patients, being the doctor and the pharmacy. So what we set out to do was to take the entire Medicare Part D formulary for every healthcare plan across all 50 states and code that into a search tool. And it took us a little over 3.5 years, but we did it. And that really kind of skyrocketed our claim to fame as a tool, allowing users to now log into Ugo when they get a rejection, a PA, or they're just looking to see what's covered for Medicare, see specifically what drugs are covered, what alternatives might be on formulary, different formulations that might also be on formulary that we've never been privy to before. See what they actually even reimburse upfront directly from Medicare. So that way we no longer have to test claim or fish and upset PBMs doing actions like these just to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks for a patient. And what that really allowed us to do was, first of all, elevate patient care, because patients were able to get their medication or a treatment option much faster, right? And instead of going through cover my meds and the PA process, we wanted people to just Ugo it, right? If you get a rejection or PA, come to Ugo, look up what's covered. And now before a clinic even asks you, hey, doctor wants to know what's covered, we get to provide the prescriber with alternative options that are actually on formulary. And so that really allowed us to flip the script on the dynamic between pharmacy and clinic relations. It was nuts. It really, we inadvertently figured that out, that, man, this is giving us a unique selling proposition. We're able to now, market even our pharmacy to clinics by saying, hey, listen, we're going to make sure that if a patient encounters a rejection or PA, that we can find a covered alternative for you guys and advise the doctor options, allowing the prescriber to choose the best therapeutic option, as silly as it sounds, being able to practice medicine again, right? As opposed to simply prescribing, in some cases, what would be like path of least resistance treatment options.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's definitely something that we've talked about for years, especially, in the realm of like medication synchronization. How can you kind of help that prescriber communication and cut down, on the workload that they're spending, just touch points and time on the phone. That can be such an advantage to that prescriber relation.
It's something we, heard kind of, again, through feedback with our prescribers, and I say prescribers, but really it's their team, right? Their MAs, their nurses that are dealing with the millions of phone calls or the faxes from the big chains of rejections or PAs. How much our system kind of alleviated that stress for them was awesome. And it kind of married that clinic to the pharmacy too, thus boosting our business. And it really was a really cool symbiotic setup that was the result of just simply having access to the information I feel like pharmacies should have anyway.
So the Ugo Rx, was that an acronym, or is it, because I noticed that it was very easily turned into a verb. You can Ugo it.
We wanted to Ugo it. Exactly. That was the thing. Right. But the funny story behind this, so there's a long story. I'll shorten it up here, but the original idea of the company was to name it Phill, Phill, like with a character, like a play on words, right? You fill a sure. Whatever. But at the time, my business partner and his wife were pregnant with their third child, and the story kind of behind that was they thought the whole time, it was going to be a boy. Turns out it was a girl, and they had been picking names. Now, Ugo actually is an Italian name. It means intellectual one, and we hadn't. At the time that we named the company, this was a chicken scratch on a napkin in a bar. This was not, anything more than an idea or a pipe dream. And I remember he called me up one night at 3 a.m., as he often does, because he's a night owl who his best ideas come at that time. He calls me up and he's like, "Hey, how do you feel about changing the company's name to Ugo?" And I just kind of laughed. I'm like, "Sure." We don't even have anybody on the platform. Sure, buddy. I think that sounds great. And he's been, we joke about other businesses that he and I have had, but he's been a little good luck charm on naming things. So we kind of just rolled with it, and God, we look at it now and we're going 6 years later.
Yeah,
the name's sticking. So yeah, thank you for recognizing how we did a little play on words there to Ugo. I like that.
so Jeff, when you kind of have taken over a handful of different roles, it sounds like, over the years at Chancy. Being a Pioneer RX customer, you do have access to a lot of analytics where you can look at your existing claims. You can see, you can examine your own data to some degree, do a bit of data mining within the system. One challenge there is, I think, you don't know what you don't know, from outside of your pharmacy. So tell me a little bit about kind of that analytic journey and how you decided that it's definitely something that needs to be pursued beyond what you can kind of tackle in your own pharmacy.
Well, part of the neat part was when I first met with AJ and we started talking about what he was doing and what I had been doing. We started seeing a lot of similarities. And it wasn't that Pioneer couldn't do what we were doing. It just made it so much faster, so much easier. So yes, we could pull all the analytics, but sometimes, with Pioneer, it's a little bit hard to get the print format right, the way you want it. And what it did is just allowed me to pull it so much faster. So it sped up time. Then it gave me the one thing I've always wanted pharmacists to be able to do was share their data. And it puts away basically, we can see everybody else's data, but they can also see mine. And that sort of helps share the knowledge. So it wasn't that it was, something totally new that we hadn't thought about doing. It was just really easy and really fast. And it added a lot of data from other stores. So that was the key that really, I reckon before we signed on and we started talking, we were doing the same thing. It was just taking a lot longer. A little bit harder to export data, and with Ugo, it's just really easy.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of those areas. We see that with the really kind of, intricate areas of pharmacy business, like, managing your ordering. There's a lot of tools within your PMS, if you have a great PMS, that you can, really focus and do a lot of it yourself if you want that to be your specialty, but it's almost a full-time job. And then again, there is a bit of, lack of outside insight, I guess, being able to see a bigger picture from a company that's, fully specializing definitely has some value. So, what was kind of the first area, or is there a kind of a first project that you took on where you saw room for improvement and you wanted to take it on?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing we saw was just missing opportunities. And, with pharmacy, there's always nice. I mean, you try to be on offense, but you also have to be on defense. So, there was a few roles we did. First, we started tracking our losses. And, if we could, Ugo allows you to sort of narrow down your losses. So it's too easy to look and you're losing on everything, it seems like. But you narrow it down to where the number of losses was, a manageable number. And whether you put your filter at $50 a script and kept bumping it up, it would keeps a tally of how many. So the advantage of that is you get it down to where it's something you can take advantage of and look at and see if there's anything we can change it to, or at least be ready for the refill. That's our main thing, is you're looking sort of, many times it's already gone, so you've already lost it or done whatever. Your main thing is you're trying to be ready so you lose money 1 month instead of 12 months before you realize that you're in a bind. The next thing on offense, it allows you to look at, let's just say diabetic supplies, something real easy that we hit really quick. And it pulls up all the different NDCs for syringes, pen needles, whatever you're billing. And you can sort of evaluate, which one will be best for you, the company, and the patient. So well, all of our staff, we have a list of which ones to try. And of course, we don't raise it. If the patient's copay goes from $2 to $40, that's not good for the patient. So that's not our goal. But if the copay stays the same and our margins go from, $3 to $40, that's good. That's a win-win situation. And we started off with just one store. And let me update you also. Now we have 6 stores and then 1 closed door. So we have 7 stores total. And I was a little, I was concerned. So we didn't throw all 7 stores on at once. But, we started off with 1. And in just a little bit, I started tracking. You can put custom dates on there and you can track your profit per invoice, from a set date to a set date. And, we were able to raise it within 50 cents to $1 per script we've dispensed at this one location. So then we added a second store and then a third. And I've just talked to AJ, and we're probably going to add a 4th one, 1st of June here. And of course, with that next one we're adding is the one that's least profitable. And we want to see, because that's what we're looking for. What are we doing right and what are we doing wrong? And part of my daily activities is I'll track my gains and then I'll track my losses. And the main thing on your gains is you want to make sure if it's good for you and good for the patient, you don't want to forget those. You want to refill them or check and make sure to take care of them. So I don't know if I beat around the bush too much there, but what I really like with it is, able to find stuff that we can make money on and help the patient at the same rate, or same copay, and then help prevent losses and know where we need help before it's time.
Yeah. So I definitely want to dig in a little bit on that, but I should probably preface this whole podcast with, this is definitely not a paid spot by any means. One of the things that I really like to feature on this podcast is the success stories that pharmacies are finding. And when you do find those organic success stories, if they are with the vendor, love to invite them on. So just want to make sure that that's clear that, this isn't any part of a paid testimonial from Chancy Drugs, but, an actual success story, which is exciting to share. So whenever I do have those on the podcast, it's because it's an exciting success story. And that's one of those things, like when I was at Connect the other week, somebody stopped me outside the elevator and they're like, "Hey, what's your hot take? What's your one tip?" Because everybody's struggling right now. And it seems like in most cases, it's a combination of just, victory by 1,000 cuts. So, just consistent.
It's tough on everybody. And that's the thing. We talk to a lot of stores every day. I think, obviously in a lot of situations, you hear kind of a similar mindset, right? Everybody, it's like that little bell curve, right? You get these kind of early adopters that understand things have changed and they're never going back, right?
Yeah.
And then you get those people in the middle, which tend to be the bulk of individuals who, they're on a little hopium. They're just kind of sitting back going, it will get better, if I just keep doing the same thing. And that's something that we try to really educate people on, is that, look, it's not 2012 anymore. I know you want to reminisce about the good old days, and that's fine and dandy, but in the same token, pharmacy is always evolving, right? It's never going to be exactly as it was last year, any year that you look at. And so as, for a lot of these owners, we tried to make sure that they understand that, like Jeff was saying, kind of, defense, offense, you got to be proactive right now. These times are really requiring, and I'd use this kind of joke, like back in the 50s, right? Actors, you could just be an actor and that was fine. But nowadays you got to sing and dance, right? Just to be able to get a role. Yeah. So as a pharmacy owner, it's like being a great pharmacist, it's not enough anymore. Now you also have to be an entrepreneur to a degree, and as many of them are obviously by title and by owning a pharmacy. Like I said, they didn't go to school for it. And so it makes it really tough when you're now thrown in the middle of the ocean and people are saying, well, you got to be a salesperson. Well, you have to be an extrovert. Well, you also have to be a marketer. Or better yet, they tell pharmacy owners things like I would hear during my time, which is like, hey, we'll just hire somebody that can do these things. Well, a lot of times pharmacy owners aren't taught how to hire the right person, right? How do you know? These are difficult tasks for pharmacy owners to jump on. And obviously, I think it's come at the industry in a tsunami-like fashion and in a very quick way, where a lot of pharmacy owners are having to adjust on the fly, super quick.
Yeah.
And, saying things to them. And I just, I kind of reflect back on our ownership time back in 2016. And we were on the verge of shutting our pharmacy down. I always share that with Ugo users because I want them to know kind of where we came from and what the platform's idea was. But we were on the verge of shutting down. And this was kind of like a last ditch effort to try to save our investment. I mean, my business partner and I at the time, we were all in. We had mortgaged our houses and just to make payroll. I mean, taking HELOCs, you name it, we did it to keep the thing alive. And so I know that feeling of desperation that a lot of pharmacy owners come from and that kind of just need for direction, or I should say kind of like actionable advice, which I think a lot of times they don't get, right? They get told the obvious, like stop doing things and lose your money. It's like, okay, thank you for that. Everybody loves being told they have a zit on their nose. Thank you for that. And so it's just one of those things where we tried to make sure that even in our conversations with owners, that we can provide them some sort of actionable kind of direction that, maybe outside the realm of their PMS or any other analytics tools that they might be using.
Yeah. So let's talk actionable steps on those prescriptions that you're losing money on, because I feel like everybody can relate to that. And, it's really weird that, script count no longer equates a successful pharmacy by any means, because if you're losing money or breaking even, there's no economy of scale there. So, now if you're losing money on a script, I feel like you really have to be analytical about that and do more than just look at the rest of their profile, because the problem is probably not that individual patient or drug, but much deeper into the third party and the PCN and the group and those different elements of those third party contracts. So if you are losing money on a prescription for a patient, how would you start to analyze that to look at your pharmacy as a whole and not just that one patient?
Yeah, for sure. So we tried to build in we call it like the 3 strike you're out rule, right? Like our whole mindset behind approaching analytics is to simplify it down into just 2 buckets of, look, it's good business versus bad business, right? If I'm looking at a loss, I can only control what I can control. And there's really only 3 things I might be able to do here. Number 1, I want to be able to price check it to see and make sure. And this is where I kind of feel like it's important to kind of keep everybody honest, right? Back when we owned our pharmacy, you had a little bit more margin of error, I should say, in the good times, as they call it, where, even if you weren't buying at the most cost-effective price, it was okay. Now it is super, super, super important that you are very diligent to make sure that you know where the costs are. And I mentioned kind of in the beginning, transparency. So we've, action step 1, we've synced up with some really fantastic secondary wholesalers, guys like Esri Rx and platforms like that have allowed all of our users to simply click a price check button next to any NDC they see on the platform, and it will automatically search the open wholesale market to find the cheapest available price. Now, not that users have to do anything with that info, but they could simply use it to keep their, primaries honest, as I call it, or keep the playing field level and find out what it's actually available for. And if they could buy it cheaper, that would be a step number 1 that could hopefully reduce the loss. Action step kind of number 2, and this is where Jeff touched on a little bit. We had this idea, this vision when we began building Ugo of making it this central place where all pharmacy owners could come and kind of anonymously share in a community fashion. And that's what we did. We programmed the platform to be crowdsourced. So what that also allows users to do is now have actionable transparency onto what their peers are doing. So if I'm using a certain NDC, I can also check by, what my peers are using for that same drug by different manufacturer, different NDC. and I'm able to click a little bubble to see all the different NDCs people within the Ugo community are using for that drug and how it's kind of effectively adjudicating for others out there, which is really cool because it gives me a trend to look at as to what my peers are doing. So I've got an action step where I could potentially try a different NDC. And then last but not least is really kind of just searching to see if there is an alternative drug or formulation of that drug available that maybe my peers are doing, which the platform allows you to coverage check something and see what my peers are doing in lieu of that. So, if I'm, for example, if I'm adjudicating like a pen set and I'm losing money like crazy on it, well, I can, action step 1, price check it, see if it's available cheaper. Action step 2, NDC check it to see if there's any different manufacturers or, maybe there's a generic available for a brand or something like that. And then last but not least, I can alternative check it through my community to see if people are having better luck on things like Diclo 1.5 or Patch or Voltaren or something like that. But it really does give me that available insight now to see what else is out there that I would have never had any knowledge of otherwise. And so I can use those 3 action steps. Now, I call it the 3 strikes you're out rule because if all 3 of those don't work, then look, by definition, you've got bad business. And that's something more of like a come to Jesus talk you got to have with yourself on how you want to handle that, whether you want to continue servicing the losses. And again, it's hard because I think a lot of pharmacy owners are having to realize that they're having to pivot slightly their business model entirely based on kind of like taking what the market gives you, right? If pharmacy is not productive or profitable in a certain area that you've been focusing on forever, you might have to look into rebranding the pharmacy or remarketing the pharmacy in a completely different area.
Yeah. So, Jeff, kind of build on that. What changes have you seen? Has that kind of influenced, what NDCs are on the shelf now? I know in the past, you would look at lowest cost per pill, and then you had to really look at the spread between lowest cost per pill and the highest AWP. And now you've got to factor NADAC into that, and also what's currently in the dispensing device, So how has your product mix on the shelf evolved?
Well, it's actually changed a good bit. And one of the advantages, it gives you, UGO gives you average reimbursement per unit. So many times buying the cheapest isn't always the best. So if you're paying 10 cents a unit, but you're getting reimbursed 12 on one, and the other one you pay 20 cents a unit, but you're getting paid 40 cents a unit instead, your return is better. So it allows you to look past that. Plus, what we can do is you can compare, per bin, PCN, whatever group, and see which one's better. So on some, a pen needle made by one manufacturer may be better with this bin and group, but on a different one, it may be a different one. And it requires a little work, so it's not real easy, but it's just something that if you're losing money on insulin, you got to make money on the syringes or the pen needles or whatever, your strips, whatever. And it really speeds up the process because what I like is I can type in diabetic test strips and for a bin PCN and then just hit the drop down and it lists every one of them. And luckily now they've got it where it's got a little brand button, and as it hovers over, it tells you what brand it is. And you just go down and you can then you can match up your best vendor prices with your best reimbursement, and that can be your preferred for that particular one. Another one we've run across is the EpiPens. I mean, we used to have to almost turn away people on the EpiPens, and now we have 2 different ones, NDCs, because of the reimbursement we've learned through UGO. You get, good gracious, I'm going late today, so please edit that out. So UGO, anyhow, it's not a verb yet for me yet, so anyhow. But it's, it's just opened up a lot of opportunity for us, and, it's made it easier.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit, because I feel like there's such an opportunity and then, a chance to lose that opportunity through, practical application. So when you find something like that, when let's say the EpiPen, you see that this one pays really well with this third party, and this one we're going to order and stock specifically for another third party. So let's just really simplify that with 2 NDCs. We want to prefer those for the specific third parties. How are you leveraging your technology, or what systems do you have in place to make sure that that goes down to the bench level so that during workflow those decisions are made and scaled across 7 locations now?
Well, the good thing is with, just say EpiPen, there's really only 2 options for us that we can, one, buy affordably and get reimbursement on. But, we went from when we were buying it from our wholesaler, we were making $5, if that, or less, or losing money, to where now, we can make anywhere from $80 to $100, per dual pack. And, but it's assigning the right ones. So one of the ones we make better on is not necessarily the cheapest one out of all of the options. And that's sometimes in the past where we would miss the boat. We'd try to buy the cheapest, but that was also the lowest reimbursement. And so it's sort of, we've done things as far as making shelf tags, or we run reports that we can export from, directly from the platform and send it straight to our stores and give them a work process. And too many times in the past, if we were losing money or not making money, we would sort of avoid those. Now we can reach out to the patient and be proactive and say, hey, look, your prescription's about to expire. It's been a year since you've had an EpiPen. Do you want us to go ahead and take care of that for you? And of course, they normally do.
Yeah. Have you employed item categories or RX edits, any of the Pioneer tools that can help you make sure that you're catching those in workflow? Because that would be a really great opportunity to link up some of those categories just to make sure that you're giving those workflow alerts. Because again, efficiency and time spent is another area where you can really save some time and save some dollars.
No, we have not done that yet. Something we need to do. And we've been working with Pioneer trying to set up alerts. However, sometimes we get a lot of alerts. So if we have our system set too sensitive, and desensitize our techs, so they just bypass. Yeah. So that's something we've tried to take back some of the the less important alerts, and go with something that we teach our techs how to look for.
Yeah, it's a fine line of, providing the helpful alerts without creating alert fatigue. So tell me a little bit more about, areas that you've been able to move the needle in the pharmacy. Because I feel like right now, anyone who's listening is saying, Jeff, come on, give me something that I can punch into my system. What NDC or what, is there a specific patient group or, success story that you've been able to really identify?
Well, just with 3 stores is what we've been tracking recently. We're fixing to add the 4th. And, we didn't want to do all of them at once, because I reckon initially we didn't want to do them all because we wanted to make AJ prove his point. And he did. So then we're adding them. And as we add them, we're more than justifying our cost for adding the stores. And the main thing we can do is I can sort of take some of the data and cheat it out to the other stores that I'm not paying AJ for, but it's so much quicker just to have each store added. And one thing he didn't tell you is if you have multiple stores, when you click on that, you can show all your pharmacy data at once, or you can pull out just that pharmacy. So one of the things we did was we went from when we're tracking our diabetic supplies, that's the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest money you can go after right there. I can take that and pay your membership. You can do that in just a few minutes, one day. You can pay your membership what it costs to join UGO. And that's the easiest thing we did. And I just can't tell you with us how much it exploded. We made real money difference and taking care of people. So that was the easiest one.
That was what, switching pen needle NDCs, Jeff? Or what?
Pen needle NDCs, because what we were doing was ordering the cheapest ones. So we were ordering from our wholesaler, and the NDC we were getting from our wholesaler, we may not be getting $10, $15. I mean, we're still showing positive, so it didn't show up any alerts. But then we did the search and we realized, hey, they're paying $80 for this. If we do, so we ordered it from a different place, and we still paid this, just a few dollars more. So our costs went up, but I mean, reimbursement went way up. So, I think the first month we did it just with 2 or 3 stores, we were able to bump it up to like $8,000 or $10,000.
Oh, wow.
So it was, you can get in real money real quick. And,
yeah, and those are so hard to catch because, you can kind of pick out the ones that you're losing money on. It's really hard to find the ones that you're leaving money on the table.
Right.
That's kind of something we work with our users on in the analytics side. That's funny, right? In pharmacy, we've gotten so beaten down that the minute we see green on the screen, we're out. It's like, thank God it's not red. So we see green on the screen and we're out of here. And that's something we focus on. Like, we built a little widget on our analytics that we call like your average profit per RX, but we kind of cutely give it the name of home base. And that's something we always talk to people is just because it's green, I mean, A, doesn't mean it couldn't be greener. And then B, just because it's green doesn't mean it's good business, right? There's other things that go into that we learned the hard way. Like kind of what Jeff's talking about, like your cost benefit analysis is something we don't even think about. How much am I buying this for as opposed to how much is it really kind of netting off to me? And it's silly because we got programmed in pharmacy to think, cheapest acquisition equals best. And you don't even look at it. You don't run that kind of analytics of like, hey, I'm paying more for this NDC. Now, the funny thing that we learned, in working with Medicare and things like this is, oddly enough, most cases, I'd say probably 9 out of 10 times, Medicare, when you're talking about an actual drug itself, really doesn't care what NDC you use. They're going to pay the same typically across the board, right? But when it comes down to supplies and things like that, it does matter. And so looking at what NDC you're using is very, very important for these things. And it's usually something like you were saying, Will, people don't pay attention to because they saw green on the screen. It wasn't a red. They just off they went. And that assumption of, well, we're just not making money on, fill in the blank. It just kind of becomes the norm. And so that's something we try to make sure that we help our users highlight and analyze, which is, what are we making money on, but what are we making money on that's below our average? What's controllable? Is there anything we can do there? Can we improve our acquisition cost, or is there a different NDC? Kind of going through that same 3-step action process, right? Like a price check, an NDC, or an alternative. And so we want people to kind of adopt that mindset when you're looking at what you can do about either your good business or bad business. It's silly how it's applicable on both sides, but it really is.
Yeah. And supplies seem like one of those areas that you kind of get locked in, and that's the one you order because that's the one you've always had.
Yep. It's crazy, right? And again, you see green on the screen. So
yeah, we were really surprised because it seemed like most of the pen needles or syringes we were ordering from our wholesaler was, the wrong ones. It was the ones, it was cheap, but we had the lowest reimbursement. And the main advantage you have of this is it's all got the same GPN, whatever, and it requires no work. All you'd have to do is just change the drop down in Pioneer and find the NDC you want or the one they have. And one of the advantages that Ugo has is you can click supplies. And like with me, at the start of the day, sometimes I'll hit supplies and put in a date range. And then when I do that, I'll see what it is, profit per script. And then you'll change it. I can change view, and it goes to, I can choose 1 store, 2 stores, 3, whichever store, and then compare. And then we monitor their progress and see if it's trending up or trending down. And that's where we want to improve. And then we realized one of our stores, one of our new stores, just they didn't have any of the right brands. So it's almost to a point where you're cheaper to throw them away because your first response is, well, let's use these up first. Well, on this one, if it costs me $4 for it and I'm getting reimbursed $15, or I could pay $6 for a different brand and get paid $80, I'm literally better off to take that box, throw it in the garbage, and do that. Now, Hugh didn't follow that plan, so we returned them to our wholesaler and got some credit. But it's just the point of looking at it this way is it's not something we can delay on anymore. We got to go. And that's the reason we've still been adding stores. And I just think it's a no-brainer. And you can almost, I mean, for the amount they charge, I'm surprised they do it that cheap, actually. But you can pay for yourself. That's what I like about it.
Nice. So, yeah, and I heard Dr. Lisa Fost had the same analysis of your pricing. So you're doing something right there. Don't listen to them and go up. So.
We're not trying to. Look, our whole thing is, again, we try to stress to everybody that, look, we were pharmacy owners for a long time, almost a decade. And it's crazy when you're on the verge of losing all of it. It really is like a shock to the system. It's something you kind of never think would ever happen, as silly as that sounds, until you're in it going, oh my God, we're about to shut down. Like, this is great. We were 60 days away from shutting down at best. And it's crazy to sit back and go, okay, we got to get proactive. And I will tip my hat to you guys, Jeff, and your team. I would say that you guys are, very, very, very proactive Ugo users. And obviously, Will Pioneer's hyper robust, and users can do so much with the platform. Our big goal was to make sure that, it wasn't about kind of giving people sort of the tool to do it, which is what we wanted to do, but really kind of educate them on the mindset of what they need to do with the data, right? It's how to interpret all of it. Because it's something that we had to learn the hard way too, right? When we started generating Excel reports out of our PMS and stuff like that, I think pharmacy from a regard has become like overwhelming, right? With everything kind of hitting everybody. And so our core goal was to just take all that and try to push people to understand that you don't need to eat the whale in one bite, although it feels like that, right? It feels like water out of a fire hose sometimes, all just coming at you, but it doesn't need to be. We can attack things in stages. And something we try to make sure that people understand is focus on what you do the most, right? Start with what you're doing the most first. Sometimes in pharmacy, it's crazy. And I hear this at conferences, and God, I used to, ask the same question that most owners do, which a lot of owners are trying to figure out what drug pays the best. Is there something out there? Is there some magic in DC? And no, there really isn't. But I think that when it comes down to being educated on different formulations and coverages, it's crazy what you can learn. I mean, we've had some of our users discover, even just by using the Medicare Part D search, they've discovered that, God, there's an ODT variant of a drug as opposed to the regular tablet. And that ODT variant pays, multiples more than what a tablet would. And, they're shocked to find out that prescribers actually prefer that or would like that, or they might have patients that would need that. In the cases of potassium chlorides, those horse pills, right? A lot of patients in assisted living facilities or elderly patients can't swallow those things. They're huge. And to learn that there's a potassium chloride solution out there makes a huge difference. Or something as silly as a naproxen 550 versus a naproxen 500, makes such a big difference. So again, being able to see that transparency, I think what it's really also allowed us to do is finally, as pharmacy owners, pharmacists, what have you, kind of take back that control a little bit and put ourselves in the position of educator, which something, we like to preach a lot. I think it's really, really important that pharmacy owners and pharmacists understand that they are, the best suited, in essence, to educate prescribers about drug coverage. We shouldn't really leave that to drug reps to do. That's a dangerous thing that we're doing. And for us having access to learn about coverage and in the same token turn around and be able to educate prescribers, they welcome that stuff. Prescribers love being told about what works and what doesn't, because we really are alleviating their bottleneck too. I mean,
Sure.
We all know that the big chains are not going to show them the courtesy that we show them by picking up the phone and calling them and saying, hey, Jane Doe's, cyclobenzaprine got PA'd. Instead of sending you a cover my meds, I Ugo'd it and I found out tizanidine's covered or something like that, right? And it really does streamline their operations too. So it really becomes this wonderful kind of, interaction between clinic and pharmacy where the patient wins and so do we.
Yeah, which is such an ideal solution. But, again, those prescriber pain points are such a great way to help your prescriber, but improve that relationship and definitely make sure that you're at the top of mind when it does come time to pull out that prescription pad. So Jeff, you mentioned when I said 5 locations, you corrected me to 6. So give me an update there.
We have 6 locations, and then we have an additional closed door we call our LTC, which we use the Parada Pass, and make it. We ship out from there. Everybody who wants packaging. But yes, we have. Let me see. We have one. We have one in let's see, Lake Park, Valdosta. We have one on north side of Valdosta now, North Valdosta, Hayhire, Adel, and Moultrie. So that's all of our stores now, and that keeps us busy.
So was that a fairly new addition?
Yes, within the year.
Okay, so stepping into that new addition store, I got to think if you're an analytic guy, you're just kind of chomping at the bit to get in and say, all right, where are we at now and where are we going to be in 3 months or 6 months? So can you share a little bit about that journey? What did you dive into first? What surprised you? What scared you?
I know this sounds simple, but we keep talking about supplies. The low-hanging fruit, the stuff that, anybody can do, a tech can do. You don't have to call the doctor. And you can make an immediate response. And nice. I wish I had those numbers before us, but I mean, the profit margin they had on diabetic supplies was literally for a month was less than $100. And we're way above that now. So we just bumped up so much that we had to raise our goal again because it wasn't fair to leave their goal so low and then have everybody else. And we're still working on that. That's one, I mean, it's not a one and done. It's something you have to monitor and keep going forward. One thing we did do with Ugo is whenever we're working on sometimes you'll run, say, pin needles, syringes through for an insurance company. You go, oh, crud, we didn't make anything on that. Used to, you'd start trying to fishing, start doing it. And that's what the PBMs hate. But this one, I can go straight to Ugo and pull it up. And whenever I do the drop down, I say, well, they don't pay good on anything for that, diabetic strips or supplies. So, it sort of lets you know what they're doing, what we're doing best. And because it tells you the average reimbursement, and it also tells you the number. So if it tells you we've got 1,000 Ugo scripts, we'll list them like 900 will be this NDC. That's probably the best NDC for you. So it helps you itemize it and go forward there. Now, our plan is we're going to have all 7 locations active, but right now I don't have time to manage data for all of them. So I've got, like I said, we're fixing to turn on our 4th location now, just because we see the value in it. And I think our key is next for us is it's me and one tech that run the program, and I find the opportunities, and then she implements them. And right now we've been doing it, with all the stores. If we find an opportunity, but with it in Ugo, it just makes it where it's so much easier. And our ultimate goal is to have a tech at each location to help identify either opportunities or problems and then move forward with it. Because the quicker we can stop the bleeding, the better off we are. And that's where we're at.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I think is interesting that you touched on, is kind of having different staff members that are focusing on that. And when you go to the Chancy Drug website, you can look at all the locations, and it looks like you guys have quite a big staff at every location, which is really cool because, and we've seen what doesn't work with some of the big box retailers with trying to stay lean on the staff side, But to do it right, you really got to have some hands on deck and people that can devote some time to some of those endeavors. Everyone comes back from trade shows, all these great ideas, all these things they want to implement, but you've got to have the manpower and the mindset to do that. So tell me a little bit about, I don't know, behind the scenes, what what's happening at Chancy that helps you guys stay proactive and offer so many services and have the team so engaged?
Well, we're pretty lucky. Hugh and Bert are both really supportive. And, it's like I've told folks before, I've not always enjoyed my job, but I've always enjoyed my bosses, and the support we get, is really good. So, it's just like everything else. We have to have a, return on investment, but, they're real supportive. And that's the biggest thing is, giving 110% at whatever they give me, and we make it work. And that's the main thing I can think of. It's just it's not like it used to be. I remember 30 years ago when I started this, we used to fill prescriptions. Everything was cash, and then at the end of the year, the patients would bring in their insurance forms, and we'd fill them out for them. We'd hand it back, and then when they come out with this electronic stuff, we thought that was cat's meow, and we were just excited. Now we realize we were just signing up for what we've got now. And but if you go back also, I think the most expensive drugs when I was out of school 30 years ago that we mostly was Prozac because it was the only brand, and then Zantac. And, but still we're talking about $100, for either one of them, $120 a month. And you can't find anything, no brand medicine out there now for $100 a month. So it's just a different ballpark altogether, and everything's changed. And you can either cry about it or you can find a way to work around it, and that's what we got to do.
Yeah, I think something that we see too is, you're right, Will. A lot of people come out of conferences really kind of gung ho. I joke it's like signing up for the gym on January 1st, right? Everybody's ready to just hit it, and you kind of see where everybody's at by January 15th. It's a little bit different, but we always kind of in our conversations with owners, we always try to stress the point that systems are really key, right? Even the smallest system, even something as like remedial as having a 2-review bin, or, we talk about these cliche things like if everything's urgent, nothing's urgent, and da-da-da. And it's funny because a lot of times, and I was victim to it when we had our store, we used to do stuff like that where we were running around like chickens with our head cut off, and we'd feel like there was never any time to attack anything or implement anything. And a lot of times it just came down to the fact that we didn't have a good structured system internally, and as we learned that we needed to change it, it opened up a lot of time to do the things that we ultimately needed to do to fix, things that were going wrong in the pharmacy on a profit side. If I needed to dedicate 15 minutes to 30 minutes a day to looking at even an Excel report out of my PMS, how could I create that time? And just creating a simple system to attack some of the biggest pain points within the pharmacy really, really helped us, on the back end side when we owned our store. And so it's something we talk to owners a lot about trying to do. And I will tell you, it's sometimes it's shocking to me that, most stores really don't really have that kind of action plan. They open the door at 8:30 and then they just hit the ground rolling, and it's take it as it comes.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I've kind of learned over the past few years from, any business books that I've read or, business owners that I've talked to, even if the strategy is wildly different from one to the next, that intentionality seems to be key. If you're focused and intentional about whatever that process is, it seems like you're going to have some measure of success.
Yeah, for sure. I think pharmacy owners nowadays are just looking for somebody to, it's not that they're not, pharmacy owners are not stupid. They know they don't need the obvious advice, but they could really benefit and, do really benefit from just somebody, grabbing them by the hand for a moment and gently pointing them in the direction. I think that really is all a lot of pharmacy owners are asking for is just, it's kind of like that old game where you blindfold yourself and you spin somebody around. You got to go, hit the piñata or something like that. It's nice when you're spinning around blindfolded to have somebody just grab you by the shoulders for a second, stop you and say, go this way, even if you still got the blindfold on or you feel like you do. And that's really something we feel is necessary right now. Owners just need to feel like somebody's going to grab them by the shoulders and stop the whirlwind for a second and just point them in a direction. And so that is super, super important, I think.
Nice. Well, We're coming up on the hour. I'm going to let you guys get back to work. If any of our listeners are anywhere in the Georgia area, there's probably a Chancy drug near you somewhere. So swing by. And if you're out on the trade show circuit this summer, I'm sure that you can run into AJ and the Ugo Rx crew out on the road. I know you guys are road warriors this time of year. Where are you headed to next?
I will actually be in Georgia in 2 weeks at the Georgia Pharmacy Association. I'm teaching a CE there, and my business partner will be at the Florida Association. And gosh, I think I got to check our scheduling, but I know that there's stuff in like June, July, August. It all goes pretty back to back.
Yeah, all the big ones.
Yeah, they're coming up. So.
All right. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Look forward to running into you, and give our regards to everyone there at the Chancy team.
Thank you so much, Will. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond the Scripts, presented by the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please support our channel by liking, subscribing, and clicking the notification bell so that you'll be notified anytime we post new content. To stay up to date with all of the latest independent pharmacy news and content, follow Pioneer Rx on your preferred social media platform.